As an FBI special agent was my dream job. My whistleblowing was apolitical and in the spirit of upholding my oath. Nonetheless, the FBI cynically elected to close ranks and attack the messenger.
The FBI will crush you. This government will crush you and your family if you try to expose the truth about things that they are doing that are wrong. We are all examples of that.
Joining us now are Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle. Thanks for joining us, fellas.
FBI whistleblowers Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle both join us now. Gentlemen, so glad to have you on the program. Thank you for your testimony.
We need more folks like you, and I'm sure more people are going to be from your background are going to be giving you guys more intel as you're sharing that with the rest of us. We can kind of see that this is becoming normal for them to be held accountable, because I think especially an institution that we pay their salaries, they need to be held accountable.
I think a lot of people do share our beliefs and convictions. I think they just aren't at the point that Steve and I and others have gotten to. They're too afraid.
Thank you so much for being a guest here on PBD Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
How big is that bloody flag that Steve's got? It's a stone wall of his house. Lots of love, guys. Thanks very much for joining us.
Steve Friend, Garrett O'Boyle. Thank you for being with us this morning. More importantly, thank you for speaking out. We appreciate it.
You're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and pursue the truth with FBI whistleblowers and founding suspendables Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
Gibson swings and a fly ball to deep right field. This is going to be a home run. Unbelievable! A home run for Gibson. And the Dodgers have won the game 5-4. I don't believe what I just saw.
It is the American Radicals Podcast, and welcome to it on a Thursday. It's post-election. We're, a day or so afterwards because all the tallying went up. Plus, we come to you on Tuesday and Thursday. We couldn't react to what happened in the elections on Tuesday night. So that is what the American Radicals are going to be doing today. We welcome you. As always, find us at rumble.com/amradpod. Be sure to smash the thumbs up and follow the channel as long as you're with us. And if you listen to the audio format, do subscribe so you get the automatic show updates when we drop them 3 times a week. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. There will be a change. We'll change here. We're going to have to make an administrative note. We'll do that at the end of the show today. So you'll have to stay tuned for that because that's going to be a big one. But let's go to the other big thing that seemed to happen. I mean, I don't know. Just like the free world seemed to be at risk the last couple of days. And heading into the election day, we gave our countdown of the 30 big stories, but we didn't know what was going to transpire on Tuesday night. So we're here to react to that and have that talk. And I couldn't think of anything more fitting than I can't believe what I just saw. Garrett O'Boyle, my co-host, is going to join me today at GOB Actuals, where you find him. Garrett, I'm wondering, can you believe what you just saw?
I can. Okay, I was like, oh, wait, can you hear me? Can you hear me? It's unbelievable, Steve. I don't know what I'm doing still. How about that? I have to apologize, Steve. I have to apologize to you. I have to apologize to the American Radicals Podcast. I was wrong. There, I admit it. Is that so hard? Is that so hard to?
It seems to be really hard for a lot of people.
I know.
I'm not mad at you. I was in agreement with you. I can't believe what I just saw happen on Tuesday.
And on top of that, I think I'm finally beginning to understand what it means to be when you can see what is possible or what can be unburdened by what has been. I think I'm finally starting to get it, Steve. Finally, after all these iterations of that saying.
Well, for memorialization purposes, if somehow in the future the American Radicals Podcast becomes like a massive show and somebody says, I want to go back and listen to the catalogs of when they were in their earlier days, what the heck are we talking about? Well, election 2024 happened November 5th, and it appears, actually we know, that Donald Trump is going to be the second president in the history of the country to win a second term non-consecutive. First one since Grover Cleveland. Grover Cleveland's a good president, by the way. I'm a fan. I don't care if he was a Democrat. He was the veto president, but he defied all odds, tiptoed through the raindrops of criminal indictments and assassination attempts and being called Hitler,
Mm.
and not only won, but won the popular vote, which no Republican had done since 2004, when Americans still really liked George Bush.
That's insane. I mean, 20 years. I was a junior in high school in 2004. That's crazy. I guess as a senior in 2004 as well, but that is wild, man. I mean, that's a lifetime. That's a lifetime ago. I honestly, I'm still kind of shocked. Like, I don't even really know what to think. It's too early to tell from a selfish personal perspective, like what it's going to mean for you or for me. Uh, yeah, it's weird. Like, I've kind of been walking around the last couple days, just like mostly with Heidi, my wife, and just saying like every so often, just like what, like now what, like I know I've sent that in some of our chat groups as well. Like now what, like, and I in a big way, like I know it means things are just beginning. Like there is plenty of work to be done going forward. I don't know what that will mean for us, but I do know that we're willing. I know that for all of the suspendables that we are willing.
Well, I don't know how you felt throughout the day, and I hated the fact that I felt this way, but I was super stressed and nervous. I think in our back channel conversations, I mean, I'm not saying that it was a fait accompli that we were all going to wind up at the end of an L-shaped hallway in solitary confinement, but the chances of that were not zero should the outcome have gone the other way and Kamala Harris was elected. So from a personal standpoint, there was a lot of stress with that. And, even just in planning out not just the future, like long term, I'm not even talking about 2 weeks from now. My wife was asking me questions, and I said to her, I have to be completely honest. I
I
can't
don't
tell
know.
you
Yeah.
what I'm going to be able to do on Wednesday
Yeah.
until I get through it Tuesday. And
I,
it was a paralyzing feeling going into, and knowing that no matter what, you weren't going to know the results until late in the day. It was just like the worst, where you're the cancer patient who goes and waiting on that diagnosis. And I think, though, that there was a lot of feelings of impending doom, or at least suspicion, maybe superstition. And I don't like being superstitious. I tend to be like a pragmatic, objective guy. And when I catch myself doing it, because we're all human and we do it, you can't help it. You're watching the game and your team starts playing bad, and you're like, this couch cushion's no good. I got to shift to the other one, right?
Mhm.
Whatever it is. I'm
Last time I wore this shirt, the Packers lost.
and I think that happened, but it worked out in the favor of Donald Trump and the Republicans at large. They won both chambers of Congress. And I think that superstition was the last election. I went to sleep, and that
Mhm.
didn't go well for me. And as a result, people stayed up,
Right.
and there were a lot of eyeballs on, and they prevented the shenanigans from happening, where I think that machine was ready to drop the exact same process on us.
Right. That was probably my biggest concern coming into it was, is it going to be a repeat of 2020? And I know the quote unquote experts will say, and they still say, well, there wasn't enough fraud or enough cheating to effectively change the outcome of the 2020 election. I don't know that I'm ever going to believe that, and I don't know that we'll ever get to the bottom of the truth of that. There we
Here's
go.
a visual aid. All right. For those listening, this comes from Zero Hedge's X profile. It's pinned up there, and it is looking at the 2012, 2016, 2020, and 2024 popular votes. And it's a little bit deceptive because the baseline is 50 million. It doesn't start at zero. So it looks like it doubled in 2020, but that's just the excess. But you can see that they showed the totals for both the Democrats and the Republicans and excluded independents, who are still the largest voting bloc. But for just partisan purposes, D versus R, there is a flat line if you were to draw it across from 2012 to 2016 to 2024, skipping 2020. And we had a jump in 2020 that seems illogical. Whereas the Republicans, they had a huge jump as well in 2020, not as much as the Democrats for obvious reasons. But if you take out the mail-in balloting and go to a more of a linear, progressive path that looks like from the other dates here from 12, 16, 2024, you can see that there's just been a steady rate of increased vote turnout. That makes sense to me for a political party that maybe is having population increase or maybe having a more popular candidate, whatever it is, that's reasonable. But the whole spike in 2020 to
Hmm.
the concerns that there might have been something off there. And it seems like 15 million voters disappeared here. I don't think they all died from Omicron, uh,
No,
but
I
I'm
saw
not an epidemiologist,
right, right.
CNN.
And I'm not a statistician or a mathematician for that matter, but I have taken math courses and statistical courses and things of that nature. And I look at this graph, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at it and say, "Hmm, this seems peculiar." And I saw a tweet from friend of the show, Tracy Beans. I think it was like a retweet of somebody, and the person she quote tweeted or whatever it was had, I think it was that graph or something similar, and and it was like a left leaning person or a Democrat, and they said something to the effect of, "How do you explain 2020? We had um, record breaking turnout, and they're claiming we had that again this time." And it's like, well, because the fix was in last time. I mean, isn't it safe to say that at this point, or are we going to further get canceled by the intelligence community for saying such things? Because anybody with a logical noodle in their brain can look at this information and say, yeah, that really doesn't seem right. I don't care that I don't have every single bit of the evidence. There's seems to be plenty out there at this point that's publicly available where you can draw these conclusions. But hey, the people on the left and the people in mainstream media, which I guess that's redundant, but they will tell you that it's disinformation, it's misinformation, and just don't believe your lying eyes, apparently.
So with our theme today, believe it. I mean, we're going to look at some of the plausible explanations, which smarter people than us, I think, have dug really into the details, and we'll present some of those, and then also some of the reactions. But before we get to those, I have one more takeaway here that I don't know if it just makes me smile or if I think it's actually going to be an effective strategy that I hope to see employed. 2016 versus 2024, Donald Trump winning. He loses the popular vote, and then they start the narrative of Russia hacked the election or
Course.
he hacked the election. And hacked is a very loaded term because people hear hacked and they think that there was actually a physical change that happened. Like you hacked the voter machine and changed the outcome.
It
But
makes me
they
think of Hillary Clinton when they asked her about her server, about wiping her server, and she says, "Well, like what, with a cloth?" Oh
correct.
man,
But
gosh.
hacked, the media was again using the vocabulary, just not your dictionary, and they were just saying, "Well, he played the system. He shouldn't have done that. That was the wrong thing to do." And they think strategically, Donald Trump was really smart. He
Yeah.
won without the popular vote because it wasn't required, right? But for 4 years and actually 8 years, it's been nonstop of you were an illegitimate president. The Russians helped you, even though we proved that didn't happen. They still helped you, or you still hacked the election. So for him to get the popular vote now, to get that white whale, to get that feather in his cap, gives the ultimate response because now if you're ever said, well, he's a felon, he cheated somehow, because I'm sure they'll come up with something. You don't have to be the typical Republican conservative who says, well, let me just explain the facts to you because you'll totally understand it. It's like, no, they're communists. They're just going to scream. They have derangement syndrome here. So you just need to do what I told my son to do in his Pop Warner football game when they're playing against a team that is chippy and starts running their mouths when they're losing to try to get you to react and commit some sort of a personal foul. I said, bud, scoreboard. That's all you got to say. It's
I
an
mean,
undefeatable argument.
yes, you cannot deny it. It's undeniable this time, across the board. Any metric you want to look at, it's completely undeniable. Along the lines of these communists and how they try to cancel you, and they actually hate your freedom of speech, and you see it all over the place, like TPUSA videos or Charlie Kirk videos, or not even just him, but countless others. Jordan Peterson, I mean, going back at least a decade now, where they, especially on college campuses, they will get up and they will scream and they will tell you to get off my campus and you're not welcome here. Well, one, that's not how freedom of speech works. That's not how even logical, normal argument works. Have a better argument. But you trying to intimidate and scare people away, that is a large piece as to why you lose or why you lost this time. And there's enough normal people left apparently where they're like, we're not taking it anymore. We're not going to have it. And I was on X, I don't know, yesterday, I think, and just kind of scrolling, and I saw one of these montage videos of liberal meltdowns. And I watched maybe a minute of it. And Gwen, my oldest, who she'll be 9, so she's young, she'll be 9 in a couple weeks. She was like, she came walking over and she's like, Dad, what's wrong with those people? And this is a 9-year-old girl who doesn't
That's
have
not
a lot of
normal, Dad.
Yeah, she knows it's not normal. And it's like, well, their brains are broken. So, I mean, I don't really know how else to explain it to you.
Well, let's talk about what else was broken. They had a pretty broken candidate who ran for the Democrats from what looks like some of the data that came out of it, which I think is worth going into a little bit. I mean, I don't want to get too nerdy on it, but let's share some of it. So Kamala Harris, this comes from the Daily Wire. I've got 2 from the Daily Wire today. Kamala Harris failed to outperform Joe Biden in every single state and nearly every county in the country. Harris failed to overperform Biden's 2020 numbers in all 50 states, in all but a few of the nation's 3,143 counties. The only counties she actually overperformed were 58. 58 out of over 3,000 counties where she did more than 3% better than him. I think it's just an overall indication of how low her numbers were writ large. But I mean, that's pretty devastating that as much as Trump derangement syndrome exists, that they didn't try to, or were unable to at least run up the score in some of these ultra mega blue states where they knew they had it in the bag, but still, I just want the satisfaction of pulling the lever against him. And I think that I mean, you and I were very sanguine about the chances there. We didn't know what to expect, particularly after 2022, where we were assured that the cavalry was coming, the red wave was coming. And after that, all the whistleblowers are going to be taken care of. Well, it was a trickle and that didn't happen. So at that point, I kind of like lost trust in what the conventional wisdom was here. But in retrospect, I don't see how you could ever have expected to win a national election, even if it's state by state, if you underperform your predecessor who was running from the basement and couldn't string a sentence together. That's how bad she was.
Right. She's she's no doubt the worst candidate of any type of political measure, race, position I have ever encountered in my life. And I think it's pretty clear that the majority of Americans agreed and saw that. And I suppose that's like a Reader's Digest takeaway. Our 138 episodes now. I mean, we've chronicled all sorts of reasons as to why we think America is broken, why we think a certain amount of people, and definitely people in Washington D.C. and media, why they would call us American radicals. And apparently all those reasons we must be somewhat correct here, because enough people said, yes, this has gone too far, whether it's infanticide, whether it's the LGBTQ death cult, whether it's the border, whether it's big pharma and COVID measures that we saw that became more and more draconian, even when COVID was less of a threat. But that was under Kamala Harris as the vice president and Joe Biden as the president. And so enough people must have seen all of these things and said, enough is enough. Even if they don't agree with every single piece, even if they don't agree with a biblical worldview or whatever, they've gone back to some type of the roots of where do you get your morality from and what makes a nation a nation. And those things must have somehow risen to the top to a degree where Donald Trump is going to win by this magnitude. I mean, I know I said it in the beginning, but I still am like stunned. I'm stunned here.
Well, before we get to what the experts, the people that read off a teleprompter, tell us what the actual reason was for the explanation of how 15 million votes just disappeared. And spoiler, it wasn't the Omicron variant. They have their own hypotheses on this. I do have one more data-driven piece that I think is worth getting to, because Donald Trump did really well with Latino voters. And I hate this. I hate how we have to break everybody down by their different demographics. But
Yeah.
this comes from the Blaze, and I think that it's worth sharing because of why these people, right now, I sound like a white supremacist, right?
Yeah.
Why Latino voters, per this information, actually did decide to vote for the Republican nominee. I think he actually outperformed George Bush's 2004 reelect, which was the best high water mark of any Republican. But from the Blaze, one reason why Trump will head back to Washington is because of his eye-popping gains among Latino voters. Trump won counties in Rio Grande Valley of Texas this year, which has been a historically deep blue pocket with an overwhelming majority Latino population. Biden carried the counties in 2020. Those same counties, along with the U.S.-Mexico border, were hit hard by the border crisis. And the Biden-Harris administration started that in 2021. He also killed it in Florida, my home state. Actually won urban and Latino-heavy Miami-Dade by 11 points. It's like a 30 to 40-point swing in Miami-Dade. Did really well in Michigan as well. He got 60% of the Latino vote in Michigan. And overall, NBC News reported Trump received 45% of the Latino vote. So almost to parity is what he did. And I think that driving factor, one of them certainly at the southern border, is because of the border invasion. Wouldn't you know it? Americans, people who can vote for president because they're Americans, care about the southern border, regardless of whether or not the people streaming across the border bear a resemblance to them or not. And increasingly not, because they're coming from all over the place, not just Mexico, Latin America, or South America.
Along those lines, I should have mentioned this probably on Tuesday's show, and now I'm trying to scramble to pull it up. But we had a ballot measure here. Oh, come on, please, where's this? I wanted to read it verbatim, but basically it was. Oh, here it is. Okay, Wisconsin voters. I'll just put it up on the screen. Where is this? Wisconsin voters pass constitutional amendment explicitly barring non-citizens from voting. Isn't this insane?
Why was that necessary? Yeah, I know. It
like,
was all over the country.
Yeah, and it's like, why? And look at this percentage. 70% voted yes. Who are the people who voted no? Like, why would you? Yes, the communists. But also, this is what I don't get about it. If you're voting yes on this, because Wisconsin, I know it's like personal to me, but Wisconsin elected Donald Trump, or our electoral votes are going to him. But yet we reelected a woman named Tammy Baldwin, she's left of Trotsky, and then we get 70% here on this referendum. Make it make sense to me, Steve, because I don't get it. I don't understand why we would need this constitutional amendment, because we already have federal law that says you can't vote. You can't vote in an election if you aren't a citizen. So I don't know. Some of this stuff apparently
it seems unnecessary. I have my own suspicions about these sort of things. I'm thinking about Orrin Hatch, the flag burning amendments that he used to put out. It was a get out the vote effort, because the presumption is that, the Republicans are going to come out really hard to vote for that. And then while they're there, they'll just pull the ballot for the Republican. So I think a lot of this is sort of tail wagging the dog, the way that it's orchestrated, because I agree with you. That law's on the books. Why do we need another one?
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to double underline it and add an exclamation point. Is that really what this boils down to?
What do we need to beef up our state constitution with that for when it's already a law? I don't know. Doesn't make sense to me. And maybe that's why I'm a better suspended and definitely forever FBI agent than I am podcast host. I don't know.
Well, you're better than a lot of the people in the media who we're going to get to now. And I'd loathe to do this, typically, because I know the media, you don't hate them enough, and they're terrible people and they're all communist. But in the aftermath, can we just have a couple of days to soak this in, like just drink their tears up, inject it directly into our veins, first in the written form. And then we do have a video that I think I want to show just to see the reaction with the wailing and the gnashing of the teeth. But first, let's eat our peas and do some reading. This comes from, again, Daily Wire. Media Dems blame Americans' racism, sexism for Harris's loss. This is less about the media, more about Democrats who are the experts, I guess.
So, of course, the blame game begins.
David Axelrod, who was an advisor to Barack Obama, he cited sexism as part of the reason for the defeat. Quote, "I think there are plenty of ways to critique her as a candidate. I think there'll be time to do that. But that doesn't obviate the fact that there were some people who probably voted against her. We've never had a woman president, and there's sexism in this country.
Okay, David.
Unquote.
You know what David Axelrod has in his bedroom, Steve? He has a chair in the corner that he sits in when he watches his wife or his girlfriend or whatever he has in bed with another man. That's how you would describe David Axelrod. I mean, it has nothing to do. Well, maybe for some people it does, but that is not why. That is not why she lost. I mean, she could be a man. She could be a man, and if she ran that same type of campaign and refuses to go on Joe Rogan and refuses to be a real human being, then you're going to get the same outcome, whether it's a woman or a man.
I mean, I wouldn't have voted for Doug Imhoff.
Absolutely. I mean, great point. Who would have? Nobody. Nobody in their right mind would have. I've seen not an article like this. I guess mostly on X, but like Jessica Tarlov from Fox's The Five. She put out a tweet, something like uh, time to begin the soul searching, and then some other stuff. And it's like, it's well past time. You all should have realized this when, or man, have you seen any of the clips from The View from yesterday? Like,
No,
dude,
I don't celebrate their collection, but I
oh man,
presume it was a bunch of cackling hens.
completely unhinged. And it's at what point are people like that going to realize that they have jumped the shark, and their way of thinking is not mainstream, is not normal, is not okay. And maybe those type of people will never realize it because it's the elitism in society since humans have ever existed and started to build communities in a stationary location where this is what happens. The elites get to this position where they think that they know it all, and the rest of you plebes know nothing, and you want to emulate us. Well, that isn't the case yet, at least in America.
Let's war game this out. Let's have some fun with this, right? Because if the election had gone the other way, let's put yourself in their shoes, right? They're emotionally wrecked and devastated. How do you go on national TV the next day and tell your audience, which you've been telling them for the year, that Donald Trump is Hitler? He's going to end the world if he gets elected. And now you have to go on and be like, well, he's elected. The world's not going to end, but you should still trust me. And we're going to get through this. These are the sorts of analyses that they have never done because they've never had a moment of introspection. They've never thought through the issues. It's just purely emotional and appeal to, well, I'm on TV, so I must be an authority, even though I've never actually read a book. I mean, I can tell you, let's stick a pin and pretend that Kamala Harris won the election on Tuesday. We come on the American Radicals podcast. And I mean, it's a little bit tough because you don't have any of the data, but go, Garrett. Tell me, what would you say?
Well, I wouldn't have apologized in the beginning. I also wouldn't have said "told you so." And
Ultimate dude response. That's misogynistic.
I also would not have shown up weeping and crying and telling you that the world is over and that the world is going to end. I would talk about their Marxist agenda still, like we already do. And that Marxist agenda isn't stopping because Donald Trump won. It would have intensified if Kamala Harris would have won. But we carry on. Life goes on. You still go forward and try to do what is right and what is just and what is truthful, even if she would have won. And
short of any cheating that was like blatant, where you couldn't be like, well, they rigged the election. I'm saying like just one fair and square. You would come out and I would say something to the effect of, the errors of their campaign, and on top of that, I would say something like, I'm very disappointed in my citizens, not because I think that they're racist,
right,
but because they have voted to make this country communist, and that makes me really sad.
Right. And I don't want that. I don't want that for my country. I don't want that for me and my life. And I certainly don't want that for my kids and their life. And this, I'm sure you've seen the videos of some of these meltdowns. And let's rewind. Let's go back to when Trump won in 2016. I think I mentioned this story not too long ago about when I was a cop and election night and I'm working third shift and I take a nap and I had to roll call. I had to be, it was butts in chairs by 10:45 p.m. And already, once I wake up from my pre-work nap, most at the time I lay down, the results are coming in, and I'm not thinking much of it. And then I wake up and I head to work, and it's like, man, it's looking like Trump's going to win, and pretty much by the time, I want to say maybe even by the time I was in roll call, it was pretty much being called for him. And then, like, right out of the gates, we get the tones go off, and we get this call to this apartment complex where this person is having a meltdown. And it was a man, and they claimed to be a trans woman, and they're on government assistance, and their complaint was that they were suicidal because they thought that literally the next day Donald Trump was going to start sending trans people off in boxcars. I don't know. And it didn't happen. It didn't happen in 2016. It didn't happen in 2017 or 18 or 19 or the early part, 2020, all the way until he left office. And then it's not going to happen this time either. Like, you people are not, I just don't, it's completely irrational to me that they, the Atlantic piece of Donald Trump literally being Hitler, and it just is, it's make believe, and it comes from the Whoopi Goldbergs and these mainstream elitists who have been spouting this, and it comes from Kamala Harris and her whole camp too, where they have been spouting this rhetoric for years and years and years, and I guess some of these people truly believe it, but it's just nonsensical. Where then on the other hand, if Kamala Harris would have won, I probably would point to increased lawfare, increased arrests of grandmas outside abortion clinics who are
because you have a proof of concept because it actually happened.
Exactly right.
Not just in the myth of that's going on between your ears, the imaginary world where you will think you live in The Handmaid's Tale.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, other than the girl from Charm showing up in A Handmaid's Tale at Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation hearings, no, that's not happening here. There was the other one remark in that piece from Daily Wire, came from Maxine Waters, who, if memory serves, told people who in the prior Trump administration, if you see a member of the Trump administration, that you should surround them and harass them and scream and cause a scene.
Mm-hmm.
Sitting member of Congress.
Yep.
Cause a scene. Might be a little heated rhetoric. I don't know. She said racism is the basic part. Now I know that there will be some support for some minorities, but basically we're outnumbered. Okay. I guess maybe Barack Obama being the president and Kamala Harris being the current vice president is evidence enough. Congresswoman Maxine Waters, black woman. But let's go over to the media, because I have this video of a media meltdown.
That's a great point about her, Steve, is she's a black woman who is an elitist herself and has lived a life of comfort and of being elected and being in these elevated positions. And she's going to play the racist card, like GTFOH,
So in addition to our elected betters, or people who are in a position to advise presidents, we do have the media, which we don't hate enough. So I have, or I didn't, but I found this comes from, I think, from the Daily Caller. They aggregated a nice little media meltdown. And again, we get a couple of days. It's
only fair. It's only fair.
Come on, let's give it a play.
This is the biggest red wave I've seen since Ronald Reagan's 49 state victory.
There were appeals to racism in this campaign, and there is racial bias in this country, and there is sexism in this country.
I can't help but wonder if the American people have given up on democracy.
I hear what you're saying, and I do see it differently, because I'm thinking about the people who are not a part of anybody's elite, who are hurting tonight.
If you were a 6'4" white man from Arkansas or from, Florida, do you think she would be losing by that much?
I think that we've got to be honest. Among Hispanic men and black men, there's a lot of misogyny.
There are African-American women who know a little bit about being talked down to, and know a little bit about having their economic dreams crushed, who tried to dream a big dream over the past couple of months.
It's not.
All right.
Yeah, I mean,
Van Jones. The music is great.
Yes,
but Van Jones saying black women know how to be talked down to, like you're doing currently.
Yeah.
And really, the point of it is they're not going to change. The leopard's not going to change its spots. If anything, this to me is proof that you just need to have scar tissue and callous every time they call you something. Stop trying to play for their approval. There is nothing that you can do to gain their approval other than be Liz Cheney and vote for the person and then kiss the boots of the person who they want installed. So that being said, let's go to the issue that drove a lot of Latino voters to vote for Donald Trump.
Was it Tony Hinchcliffe? Is he funny again? Can we is that a thing? But also on top of this, it's dog whistle after dog whistle after dog whistle. And don't forget that. And don't let Van Jones, because he's black or
he's a Marxist, and somehow he's been completely laundered into this legitimacy. Well, he's kind of a good dude, and I guess he spoke at CPAC at one point over well, it was jailbreak. It was criminal justice reform, where we had to let all the criminals out of jail because reasons, and that was supposed to be like his moment where he was like RFK. It's to some extent, and then he went right back to doing this. But to me, stop playing for the media. Go to the main issue that is going to be a driving factor when they melt down, and they're going to continue to melt down. And the biggest one they're going to do it on is when you start deporting illegals, and you better do it. You better do it, and you better not care what they think about you, because if you don't do it, you know who you're really going to lose first? The 45% of the Latino voters who put you in that position.
Right. And a huge number of the rest of us who voted the way we voted because you said you're going to do the things we wanted you to do. Like, oh, I don't know, follow our freaking laws.
Well,
and
the rest of us, I mean, the rest of us who have voted in multiple cycles for the Republican Party, because it's like, we got nowhere else to go.
Right.
They can kind of take us for granted, at least for maybe a cycle. They can't take the newbies for granted.
Nope.
They'll jump ship right away because they're not invested. They haven't come to the conclusion that they don't have anywhere else to go. You just have to accept that 98% of the time the Republicans are going to stab you in the back.
Yeah, well,
so if you want to have future prospects just for pure raw political power, then you better follow through on that. And when the media shows you pictures of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in her all white pantsuit crying at a fence line at the southern border completely organically, it wasn't staged one bit by a professional actress, then you better say, I don't care. I will open up the southern border and let you walk away. That's my magnanimous extent. You can leave right now freely. I won't actually pick you up by the belt buckle and toss you out. But if you don't leave, then I will do that. And I'm not giving you a bottle of water for the trip home.
Nope.
You got to go now.
And you shouldn't have been here. So yeah, we're not helping you. We're doing the bare minimum to get you back to where you came from.
So Fallout. This is, I think after every single election, there's always a bump in the stock market and all that stuff. So we did see a little bit of that, which isn't as noteworthy, but there was an element of it that I did get a pretty good kick out of. So this one, it comes from Daily Caller, and it's stock market soars, U.S. dollar surges following a Trump victory.
I mean, that sounds good. That sounds like making America great again already.
So the stock market indexes jumped about 2% and 3% respectively, Dow Jones and S&P. The U.S. dollar strengthened greatly following news of the Trump victory. It's the strongest day since Brexit in 2016.
Dude, that's a critical.
That was it was pre Donald Trump's election.
Mm-hmm. That's a crucial data point. That I'm glad they put that in there, because that should really resonate with. That's almost 10 years. That's 8 years ago. That's crazy.
Bitcoin surpassed $74,000.
Dang it!
Coin.
Our friend of the show, Ryan Mata, told me when it was like 60 grand, he said, just buy in. And I was like, bro, I don't have a paycheck. And he's like, we can figure something out.
Yeah. I have friends who have been in it since it was in the double digits.
Oh man. Good for them.
They are ideological, and they will not sell because they believe in it as a currency, not as an investment. So
it's like GameStop shares.
Robinhood.
Uh-huh.
But here's where I laughed. Everything is going gangbusters. I mean, we're all getting rich, Wall Street, because that evil, nasty Republican is going to be back in the White House, except for green energy stocks. which were bolstered by subsidies from the Inflation Reduction Act. That was totally not the Green New Deal.
Yeah.
While their share prices fall amid speculation that Trump could move to repeal the climate law.
The climate law. There we go again, Steve. There we go again with language, right? The climate law. You know who doesn't give a rat's ass about climate law? The freaking leathernecks in North Dakota who were put out of a job in the swipe of a pen from Joe Biden right at the beginning of his bid as president. Because and look, I'm not saying don't care about the climate. We should be good stewards of what we have, of what we've been blessed with and given. And we have been given an abundant land in many ways. And one of those ways, which we learned under Donald Trump last time, was that one of the abundant resources we have is oil. Go figure. And in what world does it make sense to stop producing oil? I believe at one point near the end of Trump's first term, we were the largest producer of crude oil in the world. And you want to talk about
Completely
Saudi oil.
energy independent.
Right.
Remember that myth
Yep.
that they said we could never do, which
We
is
could
why we
never
had
do
to go do the GWAT because we needed that.
That's
So
right.
it wasn't for that, though, we promise. And as an ode to the leathernecks, the last part of that article, Garrett mentions them. Oil prices fell due to expectations of increased production under the drill baby drill agenda. So maybe we'll get back to some semblance of energy independence, which, look, inflation's baked into the cake at this point. We're not getting back to the prices of 2017, but we can completely stem the tide and freeze it if we are energy independent. That's one of the big giant costs that go into production of everything that you want, need, and desire.
And it's huge. And think of what, I forget the terminology, but isn't there kind of a run on the US dollar being like the global linchpin?
BRICS.
Yeah. So which you probably know it and can explain it better than me, but other countries don't want our dollar to be the dominant force.
They are trying to de-dollarize their economies. They're going to band together, and that's why you have BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, I believe.
That sounds right.
But it's now involving more countries that they're going to band to create a rival to the dollar that has been pegged into every single economy, because they're tired of us they're inflating our way out of debt, and they're saying you guys are not a good bet anymore. So, I'm not in favor of BRICS as an American, but I completely understand that sentiment.
Right. I don't blame them one bit. They're probably tired of CIA-backed coups going on for decades and decades and decades. They're probably tired of, I don't know, maybe like the USA blowing up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline and blaming Russia.
Because Russia did it to themselves.
Right, because that makes sense.
Even though there was a U.S. naval vessel right there with those special divers.
A training exercise for the Navy right around the same time that happened. Yeah,
and Joe Biden, who couldn't keep his secret to himself because he's this demented old fool, when he was asked, like, what are you going to do? He's like, we'll stop that pipeline. But sir, how do you intend to do that? We'll stop it.
Sure.
Because he's just been briefed on it, and he can only retain information for like 90 seconds.
His brain doesn't work properly. And then even, what's the guy's name who broke the My Lai massacre? It was right there. He's a Nobel Prize winning journalist going back decades. I forget. I think he's only on Substack at this point, but he's the one who broke that story, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline story, that we did it. And then he was attacked, and he was held out as some incorrect journalist. And it's like, Seymour Hersh, that's his name. And it's like, wait a second. He has been impeccable his entire career, and he's broke a number of big stories that were always proven to be true. Another one he broke was Abu Ghraib, the U.S. soldier abuses in Abu Ghraib. And now he's going to get this one wrong, and he's going to run with it and just publish it and just fabricate. Give me a break.
Yep, there it is. Seymour Hersh's Substack is right there. The title of it, for anyone who wants to read, is How America Took Out the Nord Stream Pipeline. I've got one more piece, and then I've got two videos for us today to kind of send us off, Garrett. But this one I thought was interesting because of the criminal justice element, the lawfare element of it. And again, made me kind of smile when I saw this because he's Teflon Don, man. I don't freaking understand how this dude can be a billionaire and like regular people think like he's just like me.
Yeah.
And
serving
he can wave a
McDonald's.
Happy Meal out the window and
getting
after
a
that
go-
go
in
take
a-
a dump on his
Yes.
gold-plated toilet.
And then go in a dump truck and fill it with gold. And
And this coming from NBC News. The Department of Justice is moving to wind down the Trump criminal cases before he takes office.
dun dun dun.
So DOJ officials have been evaluating how to wind down the 2 federal criminal cases against President-elect Donald Trump before he takes office to comply with long-standing department policy that a sitting president can't be prosecuted. Sources say DOJ officials have come to grips. They've come to grips. They are, oh my God, the wailing and gnashing of teeth
Yes.
at Maine Justice. They've come to grips with the fact that no trial is possible anytime soon in either the J6 case or the classified documents matter. They can't say case because Eileen Cannon has dismissed it. Both of which are
Matter.
mired in legal issues that would likely prompt an appeal all the way to the Supreme Court, even if Trump had lost the election. Now that Trump will become president again, DOJ officials see no room to pursue either criminal case against him and no point in continuing to litigate them in the weeks before he takes office. So when do the indictments come for these people
Exactly.
for bringing a color of law violation charge?
Exactly right. And I mentioned it earlier, and I'm gonna say it again. I'm not as good of a podcast host as I am an indefinitely suspended forever FBI agent. Okay. One thing I know better than I know podcasting is the law. And here is a piece of that law, 18 United States Code 241, conspiracy against rights. And 242 is color of law, which Steve just mentioned. And I think both could be applicable here. And I'll just read it, or at least part of it. If 2 or more persons conspire to injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate any person in any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district in the free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him by the Constitution or laws of the United States, or because of his having so exercised the same, or if 2 or more persons go in disguise, and then blah, 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 blah. They shall be fined under this title or in prison not more than 10 years, or both. What is that saying, Steve? What is that saying, everybody at home? That is saying, and this is why Jack Smith is tucking tail and running, and why DOJ is trying to cover their tracks and say, oh no, it's because of it's mired in legal difficulties and it would probably have to go to the Supreme Court.
It's
anyways.
very, very mega Doppler complicated. You wouldn't understand, plebe.
Yeah, you wouldn't get it. No, we do get it. And it's you trying to say, oh crap, we're about to be busted and we got to figure out how to tuck tail and hide and get out of here. And think back. I don't know if we touched on it when we did the list of 30 election related stories leading up to Tuesday, but there has been a couple stories about how some former government officials and current are worried that Trump is going to go on some type of retribution crusade if he gets reelected. Well, why would you be worried about that? Let's use your argument of, well, if you have nothing to fear, or if you've done nothing wrong, you have nothing to fear. Okay, well, doesn't that work both ways then? For the record, I don't care for that argument. That's not how our Constitution exists, and it's not how your rights. It's like a cop asking you for consent to search your vehicle. Always say no. Never give them consent. And they sometimes will say, well, if you don't have anything to hide, why do you care if I take a look? Well,
Because I have a constitutional right to tell you to get bent,
Right.
officer. By the way, what's your badge number?
Mm-hmm. And your name, and is your body cam working? But in this case, it's you don't have a constitutional right to violate somebody else's civil rights, that's what this conspiracy against rights and color of law. That's the chapter of the United States Code that they are found in. So it's chapter 13, civil rights, and it's I am convinced already that is why Jack Smith is like, I got to get out of here, because they know that they were trying to get this buttoned up before, because look how long it's been going on. The lawfare has literally been going on against Donald Trump since he was a candidate in 2015.
They did the Mar-a-Lago search warrant in August of 2022 to get the evidence. It's been over 2 years. What is the pucker factor over at DOJ, or let's be specific, to the Hoover building right now?
I mean, it's got to be
last rat on the Titanic going down.
It's got to be, because they know what they've been doing. They know the type of retaliation that they've been engaging in against a former president, against I mean, think of that. It's curious you mentioned that, because August 2022, when were we suspended, Steve? September 2022. We didn't even know each other back then. One of the last things I blew the whistle on was the Mar-a-Lago raid and the use of FBI tactical units, HRT and or SWAT. And as a former SWAT guy is why I did that, because I was like, this doesn't seem in accordance with our policy. And man, I just wonder, the pucker factor. I think it has to, you can fit a dime up that bunghole. But
do you think Christopher Wray resigns before Inauguration Day?
Yes.
I think he wants the taxpayer paid trip home, so he'll probably do that. He doesn't want to get left somewhere and have to fly coach like James Comey did. Trump fired him while he was doing a speaking engagement, which is a pretty baller move.
I love Comey, not Comey. When Ray was getting grilled, I forget who it was. Maybe Hawley,
Josh Hawley.
When he was, one of the times he's grilling him, and he's like, "I am required to fly on the. Not only am I permitted, I'm required. And yes, I pay airfare for the." Okay.
I'm required by the policy, which I can change anytime I want.
Exactly. In the plane that was bought for what purposes? Counterterrorism with national security funds, and now it's just the FBI. It's the director's personal plane with his personal detail and all the fuel. And of course, it comes back to Suspendables, who broke it. Kyle Seraphin, another friend of the show, who looked at the flight patterns. Because how smart was that as a protected disclosure once he was already out of the FBI, and says, he's doing 10-minute, 15-minute flights from the Manassas airport to, Reagan International, so he doesn't have to drive. And you know how you know that was legitimate is because the flight patterns changed after that. But no accountability. And maybe it's coming. I pray that it is. I pray it's coming for all of those evildoers on the 7th floor and in other parts of the FBI, and quite frankly, the intelligence community and DOJ writ large.
All right, well, we're coming up on the end of the hour. I want to give you a chance to give us some final thoughts, but I did say we have to tease some administrative notes. The American Radicals podcast will be switching days and times next week. Launching off next week, we will go to Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9:30 Eastern time. And that's where you can find us. Same place. And we will keep, if there's any sort of updates to that, because lots of things are in flux. We're still going to go 3 days a week, but just an hour later, so Garrett can sleep in a little bit more. But got the palate cleanse ready to go, Garrett. Why don't you give us your final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to try to scream through this. So very late, very, very late on election night. I saw this on Substack. Shameless plug, lastline.substack.com. I'm also GOB actual over there, but I'm not on there a ton. But anyways, I saw this. Somebody, it's like Twitter, sort of, in a way. They call it a stack. This guy stacked this, and it says, after tonight, the Democratic Party, my party, must rethink many of its policies as it ponders its future. To have a chance at victory, Democrats should try listening to the concerns of the working class for a change. As a lifelong moderate Democrat, I share their disdain for many of the insane positions advocated by my party. Democrat politicians defy biology by believing that men can actually become women and belong in women's sports, restrooms, locker rooms, and prisons, and that children should be mutilated in pursuit of the impossible. They believe borders should be open to millions of illegals, which undermines workers' wages and affordability of housing when we can't house our own citizens. They discriminate against whites, Asians, and men in a vain effort to counter past discrimination against others and undermine our economy by abandoning merit selection of students and employees. Democratic mayors allow homelessness to destroy our beautiful cities because they won't say no to destructive behavior. No, you can't camp in the city. No, you can't shit in our streets. No, you can't shoot up and leave your used needles elsewhere. Many of our prosecutors will not take action against shoplifting unless $1,000 of goods are stolen, leading to gangs destroying retail stores. They release criminals without bond to rob and murder again. The average voter knows this is happening and outright reject our party. Enough. One, I would say you, sir, are not a Democrat if you are against those things, because your quote unquote party is for all of those things, But you are absolutely right that the American voter rejected that. The reason I bring it up is because I restacked it with a response, which I said this, and maybe I'm wrong here. It was late. I was tired. I was fired up. And I said, that's because they are no longer the Democratic Party. They are something entirely different. Marxists, some might say. Hell, I've called them that, but they are worse. Marx regarded worshiping deities as an eventually obsolete but temporarily necessary stage in humanity's historical spiritual development. The Democrats have moved beyond that, except in recent days while trying to pilfer a few votes. The Democrats worship self, they worship government, they worship lawlessness, and worship godlessness. They are as pagan as any society has ever been. They willingly want to turn America into Sodom and Gomorrah. They still stop at nothing to achieve their goals. Hopefully, many who thought they were part of the Democratic Party have realized these truths over the last 4 years and have decided to reject them. And hopefully for a long, this is me adding, but hopefully they decide to reject that for a long time to come as well. And before I kick it back over to you, lastly, gotta get to this part, of course. You know, I mentioned Daniel on Kyle's show yesterday, and I mentioned it on our show on Tuesday. And as prominent as it has been, we're back to the books of wisdom, Proverbs chapter 21, verse 1. The king's heart is a stream of water in the hand of the Lord. He turns it wherever he will. Simple truth. The king's heart is a stream of water in the hand of the Lord. He turns it wherever he will. I will continue to pray for our nation. I will continue to pray for the leaders in our nation. I will pray for President Trump and his transition team and the future of this nation. And I will pray that God turns the president's hand towards his will and that it leads to a prosperous time in America once again.
And I've got the two. One's going to make you mad, and then the other one will pick you up because, come on, guys, you got to give us a couple of days. So this is the announcement of Donald Trump winning the election on MSNBC.
Kornacki, I just have to jump. Steve Kornacki, I just have to jump in. And you've been predicting this. We've been waiting for it. And we do have some breaking news from the decision desk. NBC News can now project that Donald Trump has won the state of Wisconsin, which means he is the winner of this race and will return to the White House as this country's 47th president. And for so many of you watching right now, that news is, to say the least, a lot to digest. I understand that personally. After he lost 4 years ago, he refused to accept the outcome and incited a violent insurrection on our nation's capital. He's campaigned while facing criminal indictments related to his efforts to overturn the 2020 results, and he's run as a convicted felon. During this campaign, he has also promised to essentially be an authoritarian leader, to use power like no American president ever has before, and wield that power to go after his political enemies.
All right, we'll pause there from Ginger Goebbels.
Yes, you know what I say to Ginger? Cope harder, because she cannot help herself.
She can't help herself, man.
She cannot help the lies, because nobody was convicted of, nobody was even charged with insurrection, much less Donald Trump leading it. Give me a freaking break.
So to clean that up, because that was just kind of a dark humor, I found one for you, Garrett, because this guy's achieved your dream.
Who's laughing now, you cackling hyena with your turkey neck? I call it the Gizzard of Oz, right? We're off to see the gizzard, the wonderful Gizzard of Oz. Gobble, gobble, right? The turkey neck, gobble, gobble. That's one of the only things you're good at. You know what I'm talking about. But we've been waiting to say this to you for quite a long time, Kamala. You're fired. Get out. You're fired. And I know you're going to have to find a new job now. You're unemployed. You're going to have to find a new job. And I heard McDonald's is hiring. There's a first for everything. McDonald's is hiring. It's not as hard as it looks. And since I won, I had to put in my 2 weeks. You could take my spot. I heard they'll even let you use the teleprompter to cook the French fries. It's a wonderful thing. But as Crooked Joe poops himself off into the sunset, and you beat the crap out of poor Dougie Doritos in an alcohol-fueled rampage. Poor Dougie. He didn't sign up for this. We can finally turn the page. That's what you say. Turn the page on a failed generation of leadership, unburdened by what has been and unburdened by you. You're a horrible person, and we are now unburdened by you. We can finally heal. We can finally come together. We can finally make America great again because the best is yet to come. Believe me.
Epic. I love
Epic
it.
rant.
I love it.
Sean Farash, which is great. So that's going to do it for us today, guys. Appreciate you joining us as always on the American Radicals podcast. Back with you Saturday, noontime before the new times and days are next week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 0930. But for this Saturday, noontime, regular start here on Rumble, rumble.com/amradpod. Until then, have a great day.
You've been listening to the voice of the Suspendables on the American Radicals podcast. Follow us on rumble.com/amradpod.